coming up next on The Health Hustle.
You got to want to go deep and not fear that place. You have so many gifts and so much potential that's just deep down inside you that's just waiting to be expressed and opened up and shared with the world. So share your gifts, suspend disbelief. You have to, like, for a second be like, what if I couldn't fail? What would be possible? If I just knew that, like, whatever I did, money, like, it was all going to be there, all the resources were, like, they were available, what would I be doing with my life? And get emotionally, like, tapped into that. So it's like things happen intellectually, then they happen emotionally, and then they happen physically. So if you can get tapped in enough to that, like, emotional side, dude, you're going to, like, manifest it physically ultimately. You're going to show up and do it. So learn about yourself and ultimately show up because other people need you.
What's up, y'all? Corey here. On this episode, I had a chance to bring on my good buddy, Connor Meekins, which was so much fun for me because prior to this recording, we got to spend a week together out in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota on a camping trip, and then also spend a few days in my hometown with my parents. So I got to know him at a pretty deep level, so bringing him on the show was a piece of cake and a ton of fun. His bio is that he is the owner of LionFit Fitness. He grew up in Bemis Point, New York, which when he first said that, I thought he said Penis Point, but it's Bemis with a B, just so you guys know. His favorite books are The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, The Go-Givers, which is definitely a favorite book of mine, The 4 Agreements, U Squared, and The Practice, Shipping Creative Work by Seth Godin, which I love all of Seth Godin's books. Some of the things that we get into on this episode, which I feel like we covered literally everything, was how we initially met at the gym, growing up in a smaller town, the fact that he's always been an early dreamer, almost like a Steve Jobs type, the lessons that he learned from Tools of Titans, which is a phenomenal book, the value in going first, which I think most people should do, dealing with difficult people, making a change, how to hear your intuition, thinking for yourself, getting recruited, mental health, lessons from fraternity, discovering who you are, the impact of your environment, the dip, the birth of LionFit, branding, the journey starts with you. So many things. And if there is one thing that I want you guys to take away from this, it's that you need to share your gift. It's really something that we start this episode with and end your episode with, is just being more vulnerable and open and sharing your gift. I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and here we go. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, one of the most common reasons that I see this is not having a well-defined niche. If you go to the link in the description, I have a free 3-step process that walks you through exactly how to get clarity on which niche is best suited for you and your business. Without further ado, let's go. Connor Meekins, welcome to the show. How you doing, brother?
Dude, doing amazing. How are you doing, brother?
I'm excited to pop your podcast cherry, so welcome to your first ever podcast show. You ready for this?
I'm as ready as I will ever be right now, my man.
Well, after I saw you dominate the Boundary Waters on our guys trip, I think you're ready for anything. Let's just say that.
Well, I flipped a canoe, so that was...
Which, for the record, we're recording on the camera that actually got dumped into the water via that canoe flipping, and God knows how it still works, but we're glad that it does.
Yeah, it made it all the way here, dude.
Yeah. So we got connected like how I get connected where I feel like with all of my friends at a gym. I don't know if you remember this. It was yeah. It was through Courtney, I believe. And I don't even know. She just like introduced you to me, or I don't even know why the connection even happened initially. All I know is that we got connected, and I think an hour went by. And eventually I was like, yo, Connor, I need to actually get a workout in. As amazing as this conversation was, it's like I actually came to the gym for a reason, and I needed to do something with my life. But,
so the funny part about that is, like, that hour went by, and then I'm like, cool, Corey, you got to work out. I'm just going to go talk to you while you work out. So then another hour went by, and you were just deadlifting.
Yeah. So, which... Deadlifting is usually the first exercise I do, so I was probably there for another like 2 hours before I even actually got out of the gym, but yeah. I digress. I'm glad we got connected. The point of that story is that I feel like all the cool people I meet are at the gym these days, so we appreciate that. But this isn't a show about me. This is a show about you. And ultimately, you have now officially launched LionFit, which is the most exciting thing ever. Rock that shirt. He's got
buddy.
The shirt.
Yeah.
He brought a shirt for me as well and a lovely handwritten card. And we're going to get into kind of the origin story of how this even started, why you do it, and so many things that are going to be coming into the future of LionFit. But before we do, let's tap into a little bit of your background and just find out who you are and where you came from. So ultimately, origin was West New York?
Western New York.
Western New York.
I don't even start with that, because if I say New York, people immediately like associate in their head New York City,
right,
and start telling me a story about how New York is this and that and the other thing, and I'm like, I've been there twice.
Yeah.
I've barely even stepped foot in New York City, dude. So
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's about equidistance from Chicago and New York City, where I'm from, which is funny because it's in New York State. But 7 hours from each.
Well, that's why I preface it with Western New York, because I feel like that maybe gives people an idea of like you're not on the coast, like you were in a very different world. Because one of my best friends, Daniel Chardy, is from Buffalo, and so again, it's like one of those places where it's like it's New York, but it's not what most people think.
Yeah, so I'm from Bemis Point. It's on my hat right here. So
yeah, I didn't even know that.
Repping the hometown, dude.
Small town.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the experience like growing up in specifically Western New York versus any other part of New York?
Yeah, so I think it was just, it's such a small town, man. Like I graduated high school with 65 kids. So it was, what you can expect. It was like a farm town. It was like I drove to school 10 minutes. You passed farms and cows, and it was country roads. And, there was in the winter, all kinds of snow. If you know anything about Western New York is just, it gets pummeled in the wintertime. So, you needed snow tires on your car. But yeah, man, that was kind of like a little bit about where I grew up, just a tiny town, and humble beginnings, man. I was always I was the country boy with city dreams. So I knew I always wanted to get out and see the world, but I was like, how's that going to happen? So
what do you think that comes from? Like, what was the interest in getting out of Bemis? Because I feel like a lot of people can kind of get stuck in something like that.
Yeah, I've always been a dreamer. Like since I was a young man, I just had this certain type of energy that my mom said I was always smiling. Like, you're always smiling. Look at these pictures. Look at you in these videos and everything. You just had this attitude, like a positive vibe. And so I think for me, it was just like I wanted to live like more abundantly. I didn't know what the word abundance was way back then. I didn't know anything about abundance. I just knew that I wanted to do something bigger than just exactly where I was from.
I can echo that statement about you being a dreamer, because your ability to pay attention to details, aka my Excel sheet to the Boundary Waters, aka my email itinerary of this interview. I think you were too busy dreaming to be able to notice the details, which is fine. Know thy strengths. Everybody has a Steve Jobs and a Wozniak, as I always say.
Yeah.
You seem like more the Steve Jobs type, where you're kind of like, you're always dreaming.
Yeah. As I texted you back, teachers loved me in school.
Okay. So as a young dreamer, one might say, like, what were some of the initial just goals and ambitions in life? And like, what was the dreams that you initially had setting out living in, what is it, Bemis?
Bemis Point, New York.
That
was good, dude.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're going to laugh at this. I wanted to be an NBA basketball player.
Oh, okay. All right.
I wanted to go to the NBA. And I had my heart set on it, bro. I would practice under the floodlight for 4 to 5 hours a night. I bought plyo boxes to do like jump work. I bought a jump rope, did 1,000 jumps a night. I committed to it. I even got a hold of these like Jordan platform shoes. Like they had this little like circular platform underneath them that gave you like apparently some kind of an extra bounce. They kept you on your toes, so they like work your calves better. And so I would use those and like Air Jordan out here.
Well, you're definitely an athlete. Basketball, though, what was the initial draw to basketball? Were you just innately good at it when you were younger, or why did you get drawn to that sport specifically?
No, dude. Actually, I didn't start playing until I was like maybe 10 years old. And I remember my mom teaching me how to shoot a basketball. I don't know that my mom was like too much of a basketball player or anything, but she kind of knew the form, and you got to hold this, this hand on the side, and you got to hold this hand underneath the ball, and then you got to follow through. So she would teach me that, and I remember just shooting with one hand when I was 10. Like I didn't even process that I had to hold my left hand to like place it. So I learned from her how to shoot, and dude, ever since that day, I was like, I want to get better at this. That was like the first time I ever realized, like, I guess that I suck at this, and I don't care. I'm gonna get good. And you know why? I think it's because my heart called me to it. There's something in me that just wanted to do it. I didn't care if somebody thought I was bad or if I actually was bad, or I was just like, I'm going to get better. So I just kept going.
Yeah, I know you have a history of just being an athlete in general between basketball and soccer. And so to fast forward this a little bit then, so that ultimately led you to wanting to go to school and play sports specifically as opposed to the actual education piece. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. I was telling you a little bit about how I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Sure.
In my senior year of high school, my guidance counselor pulls me in and she's like, what's the game plan? And I was like, I'm doing pretty well at soccer. Basketball's like cool. I'm talking to her about all this stuff. She's like, yeah, but like education, what are you thinking about your future? And I was like, I don't know if I've really thought that far. Like, I'm trying to just, and in a small town, dude, if you're trying to get like looks for different, colleges, I mean, they're not coming to towns that graduate 65 kids unless you're some phenom superstar that makes big hit news or something like that. And I wasn't quite there. So it was like, all right, I know the coach down the road at the junior college has been, contacting me and trying to get a hold of me to play for the team. Maybe that's a good place to start. And fortunately, I did that because I know a lot of people go to big schools and pay a bunch of money at first and end up going deep in debt. I didn't do that, fortunately, because as I told you, I got a 1.6 GPA my first semester in college. So that would have been a really bad move to go pay a bunch of money to be in a big school.
Did you eventually end up graduating from that community college, or did you just get generals when you were there?
I don't know if I ever actually got my associate's degree there.
Okay.
I may have had enough credits to do it, but I don't actually quite know. I never went to like the ceremony or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I did do 2 years though. So yeah.
It's funny. I didn't realize how much of an overlap there is with you and I between that as well then, though, because like I think I was telling you, I barely graduated high school to the point where I don't even know that I had a counselor that was even asking me what I wanted to do with my life, because I think they just kind of assumed that I wasn't going to do anything, because like literally they were just like hoping I even graduated high school to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think to them, the idea of me going on doing something else was probably like not a chance.
Yeah.
You're going to go be a, I don't know, farmer or a plumber or something.
Dude, what do you think they think about guys? Like it's just like, when they're sitting there and they're like, he's not going to do anything. Like, maybe it is just like, oh, he'll go be a plumber or start like some whatever company. By the way, if you're a plumber.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
They also crush it out.
Oh,
here,
yeah. Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Any trade skill, you're crushing.
Yes, 100%.
But yeah, I think there is a degree of, I think they just assume, and not at their fault or not at their expense. Like, I mean, you just kind of pay attention to someone's track record and you assume the future is going to look similar, unfortunately. But,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I didn't realize the overlap, though. I was just going to say, my community college experience as well, I think I just got like transfer credits, which was just enough to get me into college, essentially.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly how it worked for me. And ultimately, I was recruited out. I was actually playing indoor soccer one day, and a couple of the coaches or at least one of the coaches from a school called Fredonia State, just up the road. It's about 30 to 45 minutes south of Buffalo, for those who know Buffalo as a reference point. They came and watched, and I guess I had a pretty good game, and they were like, cool, we want to like talk to you, and ultimately ended up going there the next semester. And that was kind of, I thought, and it was just the wave, man. It was like, okay, this is the next step for me. Like, they came and talked to me, and it kind of makes sense to keep going that direction. So
Did you feel like the entire emphasis was behind the sports aspect of it, though, then? Like, did you even have any interest in education at all at this point?
Dude, I didn't have any direction. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. And if I were to think about the word intentional, like, I didn't know at all, like, what it meant to set goals or be intentional. I mean, I kind of just was setting goals because I was committed to, like, my craft in sports. So I knew how to get better at things. But like talking to me about like, oh dude, like what do you actually want to create out of your life? It was like, I don't know. I didn't really think about it. And I would just kind of wake up and do what I thought was my next step. So that was what I was doing.
If you were somebody in that similar circumstance, or you were to talk to your younger self in that circumstance of not really knowing what you want to do or having no direction in your life, what would you tell them, or what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I would probably tell them to seek some guidance. Look at people that you admire, that are doing well, that are around you, and ask them how they look at their day, how they structure their day. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have any real structure to my day. I still work on it a lot, where I'm like using a time block calendar now, which has helped me to be really intentional in specific blocks of time. But if you know somebody who's crushing it and you see them, it's hard as a young man to be like, man, I really like want to like go talk to that person. You know, it's like hard to work up the confidence. Or we also just are. I was just probably egotistical back then too, and I was like, I know, I'm gonna figure it out. But like, if I could tell my younger self something, it'd be like, dude, just those people you admire, they want to hear from you. They want to help you out. You should probably go talk to them.
Here's why I love that answer. This is an exercise I've done in the past, and I recommend anybody listening can do as well if they're struggling with the direction piece, is to basically make a list of, we'll say, the 5 or 10 people that you admire, like you said, because we all admire some people, but the question then becomes why. And I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that if you were to line up those 5 or 10 people, you would start to see some overlapping characters, values, what they do, how they show up. And then you can start to see is like, oh, these are the things that I also clearly innately care about or value or want to move towards. Because it was an exercise that I did, is like I put down a list of all the people that I'm like, I love this person, I love what they're doing, I follow their content, I'm interested in whatever projects they're working out. But then it was like, well, why? And for me, it was like, basically it came down to they were writers, they were podcasters, they were marketers, they were content creators. And so like, that's why I started moving all my energy towards those things, because I was like, oh, these are the overlapping patterns. Clearly I care about these things. Why not get better at those?
100%. So that actually kind of gave you some direction.
Totally.
When the whole world, like if you look at everything that's possible, that's huge.
Yeah.
And people will talk to you about like, oh, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be an accountant, exciting, right? Like fun. I don't want to do any of those things, right? Like, so we hear about the kind of cliche paths to go. Again, those are awesome paths too, but I didn't want to do any of those things.
Right.
So like, if you can narrow that down a little bit and start to see common threads of the people that you actually do admire and how they do things and what they're working on, I feel like that funnels it down way more to who you actually like want to become.
Totally. Yeah, because one of the books that you put on your questionnaire was Seth Godin's The Practice.
Yes.
And Seth Godin is one of those people on my list. And if you look at what he's doing, he writes every day. He has a podcast show. He's like the guru of marketing. And these are all things that I'm like, oh, I love all these and I'm excited about all these, which is why obviously I do what I do on a day in and day out basis, is because like so much of what he does is in line with the things that I care about for whatever reason. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't tap into the fact of like, why do I admire this guy? Oh, that's why.
Yeah. Another book, that's a great one, by the way, that taught me a whole lot about actually just putting things out into the world and shipping them too. So a whole nother topic. But another book that I don't know if I put on there, but that got me into that mindset of like, what are these people doing who I admire, was Tools of Titans.
Oh, yeah.
Tools of Titans was huge because I was, at that age, I mean, I was 23, 24 when I first found Tools of Titans. And it was an important time in my life, which we can get into. But like, I was looking at like, oh, wow, like here's Tony Robbins' 5 or 6 pages and what he does for his morning routine and what he does like throughout the day and how he looks at like gratitude and his 3 to Thrive priming exercise in the morning and says, if you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. And I started like getting all these like cool ideas. And, you know, you heard from so many, like there's so many amazing people in that book and book recommendations that he gives throughout and that they give throughout. And I was like, this is what I want. This is giving me a ton of direction. So that book was super helpful too.
So this might be a difficult question, so I'll buy you some time here to think about it. But I'm curious as to what are the main maybe people or ideas or principles that you pulled out of that book. And as you think about that, just to give people reference, Tools of Titans, if they don't know what it is, it's essentially what feels like a resource book for every super smart, intelligent person, what they're an expert on, and their main takeaways on every area of life, from health, wealth, relationships, happiness, whatever. And so it's just like a dictionary, basically, of these massive ideas. So it almost feels like more like a book that you turn to reference than you actually read through. But I'm curious for you, is like, what were the ones that really stood out to you and why?
Well, I know that this is big because my vibration changed when I was thinking about it, and it was taking me some time. I got goosebumps thinking about this. So Gabby Reese in that book, I think she's married to, I don't want to say if it's wrong, but I think it's Kelly Slater, like pro surfer, big wave pro surfer. Okay. And she said this thing that stuck with me like forever. Go first. Like be the first one to go up to somebody and say hi. Be the first one to start a conversation. Be the first one to start something, like start the life of your dreams that nobody, like LionFit, dude, go first. Like, and so, dude, when I don't want to jump like too far ahead, but when I first moved to like a big city, it was like moving to the apartment that was Chicago. It was like, I moved into my apartment building and I was like, if I'm one thing, if I'm going to do one thing, I'm going to be the first person to approach everyone. So I would like say hi in the elevator. I'd meet the doorman. I would meet like I was just like saying hi because I'm like, what would I want? I'm moving to this city. Like, you know, if you were a brand new person, especially if you're like somebody who maybe like introverted, or you're like, I don't know if I want to like be the first one to do something. Imagine how you could open up somebody's day and make their day better if you were the first one to go do it.
I like that one a lot. I'd be curious, just so other people know, did that ever backfire on you, or did it always turn out well?
My gut reaction tells me that it typically went pretty well, but I don't like to dwell on stuff that didn't go super well. So, but like,
I'm sure it did. I just like, because I think it's more just a fear thing. I think most people don't, out of fear of whatever, rejection, ultimately death at the end of the day. But but I'd be curious as to like if it ever did or didn't. I don't know.
I think that there were times when I didn't get like there's times definitely where you don't get like a lot of response or whatever. It's like people kind of are like, you may not even get a response. You're like, all right, cool. Like, no worries. And yeah, the book, The Four Agreements, talks about don't take anything personally. Dude, it's not because of you. Like, that has nothing to do with you. Continue to be a light, show up, give other people what you're looking for. If you want kindness, give kindness. If you want love, give love. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about you. And chances are, I mean, they heard you for the most part, unless they were just totally ignoring you.
Dude, one of the ideas that literally changed my life exactly to that point of don't take anything personal is when I reframed how when people are angry or rude or just do something that's generally not kind towards me, and I just reframe it of like, man, they must have something going on in their life that's really tough right now, or something's really hard, or they're not feeling well, right? Like, when I reframed it to that, it changed everything about my perspective of the world, because it takes the me out of it. It takes the like, what did I do, or like, why are they so mean to me, or like, what's the issue on my end? And it was like, actually, it's probably not even about me at all, and almost never is at the end of the day. They probably have something going on in their life that's stressful or painful or hard or confusing, and they're just showing up in a weird way. And so I love that idea. Yeah.
And I'm super fortunate because, you know, my siblings, I have 3 siblings, 2 brothers, one older, one younger, and sisters. I have a sister. She's the youngest in the family. Now, my little brother, I mean, they're all my heroes in different ways, dude. But my little brother changed my whole mind about this when I heard a story about what he does when he encounters somebody who's having a super bad day. He was like, because he started working for this like secondhand loan company called One Main Financial, and if you know anything about like secondhand loans, they're basically where you go if you can't get a loan that actually would be for solid credit, right? So he started working there, and he would encounter people who were down on their luck, like all the time. Don't pay things back on time, call and get super angry at you. And he had to figure out as a young man how to process this. And my little brother started praying for those people. He said, I literally, he said, Connor, I pray, like I truly like pray for these people because I can tell how much they're going through it. And I was like, dang, dude, that's really important.
Wow, servanthood brother you have there. Obviously, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
I want to pull back on your story here a little bit, though, before we get ahead of ourselves, because, we talked briefly about eventually you found your way to a big city. But before you did, you went to college and got a degree in finance, correct?
Yes. So, jumped around a little bit. I wasn't happy at Fredonia State, and I got a concussion a few games into the season. I was doing all right on the soccer team. I remember I was doing fine, and it was just the place I was living, I didn't necessarily love the spot, and I just my heart really wasn't in it with like soccer anymore. So that was when I first really felt my heart start to change around it. I mean, dude, I was being careless, bro. I mean, I ran around one night, I ran around a corner, I was kind of like tipsy drunk, and I didn't see like this sidewalk that kind of was like, it was popped up from where it like checked off of the other part. And it was like 1.5 inches, 2 inches up. And I didn't pay attention to it. And I smacked my big toe on it when I was running almost like full speed. And I was like shattered toenail. My toe was like fractured. I mean, it was pretty bad. And I waited and drank water, and until I felt like I was ready to get up and make a move. Dude, I ended up later that night, I was locked out of my apartment. I totally forgot. I was locked out of my apartment that night too. So I'm like around the corner. I go home. My roommates aren't there. They're not answering their phones. So I waited a couple hours. I had my keys to my car, and I drove 30 minutes back home. This must be like 2 a.m., dude. And I show up at my dad's house, and I...
Drunk? You drove home drunk?
No. I waited until I was like, this was hours after I had like shattered my toe.
Okay.
And I wasn't like crazy drinking that night. It was just like had a few. So I waited. Drank. I was like, all right, cool. I'm ready to. And so I go back home, and I'm on my dad's couch, and I'm sitting there, and dude, he comes out. He's like, Connor, is everything okay, buddy? And I was like I just broke down, bro. Like I was crying. I didn't know why. It wasn't because my toe hurt.
Right.
It wasn't because my toe hurt. I just hated where I was at, bro. I didn't want to be in this town. The Fredonia, and it wasn't for me. And I was like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. So I needed to make a change for sure.
Is it what did you learn from that? Is it because you felt like there wasn't any purpose behind what you're doing? Is it because you lost your community? Is it because it just like you felt like you're wasting your time? What do you think you learned from that?
Yeah, I think there was going to be a point where I like had to make a change, right? Because as I was telling you, I just was doing the next best thing for me. And that works until it doesn't. Like soccer's going to end, right? Like if you're not going to the pros, and so 4 years of college soccer and you're done, your eligibility's up. So I was sort of having that moment where I was like, this is year 3. I keep getting injured, not even on the field sometimes. It's like something must be telling me, whether it's God or whether it's intuition or, the universe, like something's telling me that I need to start like going a different direction.
I know you're a dreamer. Have you always also been intuitive?
I think I've always been intuitive, but I didn't know what intuition was for a long time.
So you were paying attention to the gut feeling or the inner voice, but you weren't aware that that's the thing you were listening to? I
think oftentimes I would just kind of like, I don't know. I think I'd almost like shrug it off at times. Like it was just, I was just going a direction. I felt like it was the right direction to go. But like, yeah, I didn't actually know like where it was coming from or anything like that. I only knew intuition and what it was much later in my life when I actually learned about it. But yeah.
It's interesting. I admire people that have that. I often joke that sometimes I wonder if I have feelings. Sort of joking, sort of not joking. But I think there's a lot of people that are just better about it. And I'm not discarding it at all. Honestly, I think there's a ton of value in it. From basic things of like I truly believe of, pheromones or just like certain things that you notice body-wise in terms of presence around other people. So like I think there's a lot to be said about it. But I think it is something that I've definitely had a lot of weakness on. For you, that's somebody that's stronger in your intuition. Like, what is it that you notice, or what is it that you feel, or how could you help somebody else understand what might be their intuition?
I think that your intuition is always trying to tell you something, right? So I think if you can sit down long enough and get away from all the distractions, right? Like tune out the noise so you can understand the signal. I always like look at the noise versus the signal, right? The signal comes from you. The noise comes from everywhere else. So I'm like, if you don't know what it is you want, or you're having a hard time even sitting down with yourself, your intuition's going to have a hard time getting to you, right? Like, because you're focused on, somebody else's voice. You have a bunch of filters coming in, a podcast that you listen to, music. Music is very powerful on our dopamine, like on our dopamine responses, right? So it's like that dopamine's going crazy when we're like getting external stimuli all the time, especially living in a city like Austin, dude. Like the stimulus from the environment and externally is crazy. So I think it's important to find a way to tap in, to understand who am I and what do I really want? And what is that inner voice trying to like to tell me to do?
Yeah, I just wrote a whole a whole blog about that recently, about my trip out to Kalamazoo, Michigan. And it wasn't exactly I didn't call it intuition, but it was this degree of tapping into just having awareness around our thoughts and our feelings and processing that stuff. Because if we don't have, and everyone's going to tell you need to meditate. I'm not going to tell you that. I think there's a lot of ways that you can do it, right? You can go on a run, you can journal, like you can go on a bike ride. I don't know. You can get in nature. I think there's a lot of ways that you can tap into exactly what you're talking about. I'm not going to sit here and preach and tell you have to meditate, but I think there does need to be some sort of practice of paying attention to that stuff. Cause like that's what happened to me when I was in Michigan, dude, is like I was having a conversation with a buddy and he said something to me and then I noticed the stories that were playing out in my head of what I thought and felt about this thing that he just said to me. And just to give you an idea of what we were talking about is essentially he was asking if I was going to live with my girlfriend when I stopped traveling and I came back to Austin. And the stories that started playing out in my head were basically like, never live with somebody before marriage. If you live with a partner before marriage, it's going to destroy it. And like just all these stories that were playing out in my head. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, why do I believe that, first of all? And second of all, is that even true? And what the answers came up from that was, one, I had heard somebody else say that to me, so I don't even know if it was true. And then I looked into it, and it's not even true anyways. And I was like, that's so interesting that I was just noticing these stories that were playing out in my head. But I think that goes very closely to the intuition piece of it as well, is like noticing where these signals are coming from, right? Are they coming from somebody else, or are they coming from what you feel inside or what you notice inside?
Yeah, dude, so what happens is we end up not thinking for ourselves if we let this go too long, right? I heard this quote one time, 2% of people think, 3% of people think they think, and 95% of people would rather die than think.
It's so true.
I realized that I was not thinking though, bro. Like,
oh my gosh. First, I don't know if those numbers are accurate, but it feels accurate.
yeah.
Because I think it is uncomfortable I think it comes down to decision making. I mean, that's why there's so few leaders, especially in today's world, is because making decisions is hard. It's challenging. It's cognitively intense. It's calorically intense.
Yes, very much so.
It can be very stressful. And so to not have to make decisions is 1,000 times easier than being the one having to make decisions.
Yeah. One of the reasons I love you so much, bro, of many reasons, is that you are seriously one of the best listeners that I have ever met. And that is a skill in today's world that people are not focused on. Like, you listen to most people talk, it's so clear that they're not thinking. They're not thinking, they're not processing, they're not taking time to listen to you, they're just kind of waiting to respond. And you can feel that. If you're a person who's tapped in, you've done some of that work, like you can feel that they're kind of hearing you, but they're not listening to you. Hearing and listening are two totally different things.
Dude, first of all, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
I mean it, seriously.
More than you probably know. And I will say too, you probably noticed then that the guys that went on our trip to the Boundary Waters, they're a very specific person. Because you're right. You can notice it. You can tell when someone's actually present with you and they're actually paying attention and they want to be engaged in a conversation versus they're just thinking about whatever issues next or wherever they're going to be at next or whatever the problem is and just stuck in their own thought process essentially. And so you probably notice is like the 8 guys that were on that trip are very present people. Like they actually want to be there with you. So,
totally present and voracious readers.
Yeah.
And like are trying to figure out ways to expand their life and also to serve people and to like help one another, which was so great to come to a place where there's just 8 people who are all focused on like service and helping one another and just telling stories and listening and sharing. Dude, that is such a vibe.
My favorite part was like noticing how like little pockets of people would start happening.
Yep.
It's like 2 or 3 people would start talking and then these 2 people would start talking and then it would like kind of shift and transition and all these like little micro conversations that were happening. That was like my favorite part by far, actually.
Yeah, I remember specifically like in the middle of the day, there was like, I don't know, probably 4 different groups of people. Like it was just twos and people who hadn't talked to each other personally too much across the whole trip, like just going and learning about each other's lives and where we've been and where we're at and like just having fun with it, man, laughing and enjoying each other's company.
If anyone's curious about this trip, there's plenty of, photos and content, I think on both of our social media pages and that you can find online. But so let's continue your story here. So college, crying to your father, not wanting to be there. Did you finish your degree then, or what happened next?
So I was on a track to do, I knew I loved fitness and I loved sports and stuff like that. So I was, back in junior college, I did like exercise science pre-physical therapy track, I believe. And just kind of was getting by, right? Like I'd get like C in biology and C plus in anatomy. And it was like, I was just figuring it out, right? So had some credits transfer with me to Fredonia. And then I ended up, and then I got a few credits, maybe like 12 at Fredonia. I don't even know if I passed all the classes I was taking. So ended up taking those. And funny enough, that summer before, so it was fall semester when I was at Fredonia. The summer before, I had gone to this big pond party. It was a thing in Western New York. So yeah, if anybody's listening from Western New York, you totally know like that's the vibe. And if you're not from Western New York, which is most people, it's just there's a bunch of land and that's kind of like you can go to the back of the woods and have big fires, and that's kind of like one of the things that people do. So it was
Pond, P-O-N-D?
P-O-N-D, yeah. Pond.
Okay.
Pond party. Yeah, it was just this big. And so this guy wasn't I don't think we were friends at the time, but one of my best friends now, whose name is also Corey Bauer, was putting on this party, and we met right around the fire, and he asked what I was doing. I said, I'm going to play soccer at Fredonia, and he's like, nice, man. Are you like, how are you feeling about it? And I was like, yeah, this would be fun. And he's like, could tell immediately I wasn't like that stoked about it. And he's like, hey, man, if you're ever interested, he was the recruitment chair for a fraternity, so we were totally like broing out. And he's like, hey, man, I'm like the recruitment chair for Pike at Kent State University, and dude, I'm going into my senior year, but we'd love to have you rush, man. I was like, what? Like, okay, a fraternity? Like I never thought that I would join a fraternity, bro. Like, never crossed my mind.
Which I want to get into. Okay, so then you did Rush. What does Rush entail?
So yeah, essentially, just backtracking for a second, in like December, dude, after that semester's like wrapping up at Fredonia, I hit up Corey. I'm like, hey man, you know that like time we talked at the pond and you told me about like rushing the fraternity? I'm like, is that offer still on the table? And he's like, dude, 100%. Like if you can get the application in and you can come to Ohio, and Kent State is in Ohio for those who don't know. Mm-hmm. So if you can do that and get everything situated, all day, bro. So I put in the application. I don't know, a week or two later, I was accepted, and had a massively fortunate circumstance where my dad had recently got employed in Ohio, 45 minutes north of Kent State.
Oh, dope.
So I had like just figured out dual residence, and it was we got that sorted out. So I commuted my first semester, and I ended up doing that. And some nights I'd stay at the fraternity houses. And that was an experience for sure. They were pretty interesting places. I just kind of like some nights would have a long day at school or whatever we were doing. And like,
was this a party fraternity, or what kind of fraternity was this?
So we went by this acronym called SLAG, Scholars, Leaders, Athletes, Gentlemen.
Okay.
So we sort of like had that like do it all sort of a vibe to it, you know, like okay. Party, we can have some fun, but also like get the grades and, you know, do the philanthropies well and show up for other people and play intramural sports and the whole thing. So.
Did you, I feel like I probably know the answer to this question, but I just want to pose it for anybody listening. But do you feel like joining that fraternity had a positive impact on how well you performed in school?
Yes.
Okay. Because you were held to a standard by those people.
I think I was held more accountable.
Sure.
Dude, that was the first time really that I felt true brotherhood. Mm. Like, I think number one, as men in today's day and age, we really need to be there for each other. And like for any guy who's listening that feels like they're like isolated or cooped up in their apartment, or they don't have like a community that they look to, and this goes for women too, but I just want to say for like guys, we often like I have a hard time like reaching out personally when I'm like feeling that I don't have a great community or group of people. I'm like, I just rather not share it. Like, I just want to say you do have people that want you there. You really do. And like there are so many people who are looking out for you, and there are so many people who want to see your success. So don't hide your gifts. Like, please, like, for the love of God, do not hide your gifts, because that is really a sad thing when people are not expressing themselves to their fullest. So I don't mean to like side rant on that, but like I was massively grateful for having brotherhood, dude.
And I want to echo that as well. Is like, again, not that women don't deal with this issue as well, but I can say, based on a lot of the conversations in the communities that I've been involved with lately, is like, there's a lot of guys out there, man, that feel like they need to do it on their own, and they're struggling. And there's obviously, if you look into it, there's a lot of mental health issues of just loneliness and not feeling like they have community, especially in like men's health, which is why suicide rates are, I think they're climbing in men's health, actually, last time I checked. But
yeah, dude, it's actually pretty nuts. And I mean, there's, I'm sure, very powerful statistics out there, but you know, I know that more and more people with the ability to just pop on our phones and scroll through media and get quick dopamine hits are not looking for that personal connection as much anymore, because it's convenient to do other stuff. And It's like, dude, that leads to all kinds of addictions and just problems, I think.
Have you ever, this is kind of off topic, but have you ever heard of dopamine stacking?
I think I've heard of the concept, but can you elaborate?
Somebody was telling me this the other day, and it got me reflecting on myself. They were talking about working out is a form of dopamine stacking, when basically you take a pre-workout, so you feel really good, you have a bunch of caffeine and a bunch of sugar, you put on like loud music, and so like that feels really good, or it's like some hype up music, and then you work out, so then you have even more dopamine coming in. It's almost like an overload of dopamine, to the point where it's like almost not healthy. And it's weird to think about it like that, because obviously who would argue that some sort of habit or routine that gets you to work out would be unhealthy? I'd say probably 95% of Americans could benefit from that. But just that idea, it got me reflecting of like, oh man, like that is actually a huge dump of dopamine. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it just got me thinking about that idea.
I mean, I could see that. I don't want to say definitely. I don't like to put definites on things, but I could certainly see that being unhealthy, right? And I've gone through that experience too, where I'm dopamine stacking, like you say, like all that stuff you just mentioned, like pre-workout, smacking that, and then turning on loud EDM music or something, and going and getting this crazy workout and having this like massive high, and getting in my vehicle afterwards and just being on this high. But dude, what goes up must come down.
Exactly.
Like, and then the lows, like,
totally.
What do we do? What do we do from here?
Which is where I think, again, not that, I mean, I would argue that maybe it's a healthy addiction, but I feel like that's where a lot of times the addiction of exercise comes from, right? Is like, yeah, it's that huge hit of dopamine that you get from piling all these things on top of it, doing it. So
yeah,
again, one could argue it's a good habit or addiction, but I don't know, just something that I've been thinking about lately and reflecting on. So.
Yeah, totally.
But okay, fraternity boy. Before we move on past the fraternity days, do you have any good stories from that experience?
Man, well, I think that
or lessons learned, I guess.
Well, I learned a lot. I had to do this is kind of funny. When I got to campus, my buddies, Corey was one and my buddy Connor Lozier was another. They're like, dude, you got to do this, like, what do they call it? Alpha Phi, the sorority, had this like male pageant.
Male pageant?
Yeah, dude. It was like you straight up went up and there's like a swimsuit, like you had to go wear a swimsuit for part of it, take off your shirt, do it like that phase of it, and then you had to go do like a talent, and you had to like go up and there was a group portion. Like it was just like this whole thing.
Tell me you won.
I didn't win.
You would. I thought you would have totally won.
I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of people through that, and it was a hilarious experience. There must have been like 300 or 400 sorority girls in that ballroom, though. I mean, it was the Alpha Phi was there was only 7 sororities on campus. Alpha Phi was one of the larger sororities, and so it was, dude, I was on campus for like a month when those guys were like, "Hey man, do you have a talent?" And I was like, sort of.
What was your talent?
I danced. I just did like a freestyle like dance or something.
Like a break dance?
Kind of like I did the worm up on stage and did some other. Yeah.
Interesting.
So that was fun.
I thought for sure you would have won. If anyone's listening and not watching, Connor's kind of a bovine. Like he's just built like a swolley mammoth, I guess you could say.
I just learned what bovine was. We were like taking a bovine supplement on the trip at Boundary Waters. I'm like, what's this?
Colostrum.
You're like, that's you, bro.
Yeah, you were taking colostrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember, I'll never forget, I think it was at LA Fitness. We both happened to be going to LA Fitness. I think I ran into you one day, and I think you were doing pull-ups, and your hamstrings looked like they had biceps as you were doing pull-ups. And I was like, what is this guy made out of? Like, farm boy strong.
Part of that's genetics, dude. My dad does like mini triathlons and stuff, and yeah, he's a stud. So,
side note, have you ever gotten into the endurance game at all, or just purely just like weight training and athletic sports?
I was starting to get a lot more into. I mean, I played college soccer, which is endurance training in and of itself.
Sure.
So you do develop pretty strong leg muscles through soccer. People will be like, "Oh, those are soccer legs," and it's like, yeah, I mean, kind of it for sure. Like, there's a different level of like musculature that develops through soccer. So that was part of it. I got big into like running, and then kind of went through some nerve stuff recently. But yeah, I was starting to get up to pretty big miles, man. Like, doing, I don't know, 5 or 6 almost daily, and starting to train up for, who knows, maybe I would have taken that further. But yeah.
Plan on running 8 this weekend if you want to join. Side note. Okay.
8.
Let's move forward then.
Yeah.
So Shorty boy eventually graduated from Kent University.
Fraternity boy, Corey. No,
sorry, fraternity. I was never in one. I always made fun of the guys. Sorry. I always made fun of the guys and girls, only because, not that I don't think there was value in it, only because I went to a college where like it wasn't a big deal. It was actually more fun to make fun of them. It's kind of like how I feel now as an Android user, being surrounded by iPhone users, is like everybody likes to make fun of me because I'm the weird odd one out. And so that's kind of how it felt in college.
Green text guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a green text guy.
Chris, my buddy Bates, asked me to put together a group chat the other day, and I knew all the people in this group chat were iPhone users. And the second I created this group chat, I was like, here comes the hate.
Yep.
And then and then 4 texts later, someone's complaining that they can't name the group, and I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna live this down. So
amazing.
Okay, so you graduated from Kent?
Yeah, I do want to share one more moment at Kent that was probably pretty powerful. Was I really, again, was just kind of like discovering more, who am I? What am I doing? Like, what am I interested in? I always kind of liked dancing. I loved the idea of like singing and different stuff. But I ended up watching my buddy, Connor Lozier, who was awesome at choreography, bro. He was the external philanthropy chair for our fraternity. So in Greek life, they do these big events, and, each fraternity or sorority kind of gets up on stage and does, sometimes you partner up with other groups, and it's like, you just do it for the whole Greek community, and you have like these philanthropy performances, and they're ultimately to raise money to create awareness. One was actually SAVE, which was Suicide Awareness Voices of Education, which was a really cool cause. So I ended up taking that position from once he graduated, external philanthropy chair. And so I had to like choreograph a dance performance like on stage, and I had never done this before. And I'm just like, and helping like put this together. And I had a good buddy who was, at the time, who was helping like in the fraternity with everything too, and he was a massive part of this. But it was like, so there was some help, and there was some other people getting involved, but dude, I would just be sitting at home at night like, how do I get a group of people to synchronize up and dance and do this? And yeah, man, it was kind of like scary and nerve-wracking, but I did it, and we actually ended up doing we did Up and won the whole thing.
Damn.
Yeah, we did Up, dude. It's probably on YouTube somewhere, but yeah, we did this crazy performance. We literally lifted this house, it's kind of this like mini house that we created out of some stuff on Amazon, and we actually like pulled this black curtain dropped underneath when we like picked it up, so it looked like the house was floating, and it had balloons behind it. So we had this whole like simulation of like the movie Up.
Damn, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, how much money did you raise for something like that?
That was like, I think the Greek community raised something like $70,000 to $75,000 or something like that.
Damn.
Yeah.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It was, and I just didn't, I knew, like I said, relatively nothing about choreography or getting groups together. But again, it's just like they sort of go before you know. And it's just, I ended up learning a lot from that. So
learn by doing, my friends.
That's what you've done. Less thinking, more doing. It sits on my laptop and stares at me every day. So thank you for that.
I got you, brother. Okay. So, this is the transition of when you officially graduated and moved to the corporate world. Is that the next step here in this?
Yeah. So I ended up I did get my finance degree. I ended up making it happen by some stretch of the imagination. I got the grades I needed. But again, like I said, the fraternity helped me to bring the grades up, and to ultimately, I think I had like a 3.7 one semester or 3.75 or something. So we got better, so I shaped up, and I'm like, I need to figure this out. So,
well, that's why I wanted to bring that point up about having that impact to the people around you, because it literally, again, the parallels of our story, the exact same thing happened to me as well, is that when I got around a different subset of people that subconsciously, I guess you could say, held me to a higher standard, that's where things like started moving in a forward direction. And that's where I learned the lesson of the impact of people and environments is like, for whatever the endeavor is in life, if like you want to get better grades or you want to be more athletic or you want to be kinder to other humans, is like get around the people that emulate those things, and just by nature of being around them, you're going to adopt those same things.
Dude, 100%. And I remember like a couple of guys that would had one got together with me in the hub, the cafeteria area at Kent State, and I was thinking about quitting the fraternity and not doing external philanthropy chair. I was like, this is way too hard. I'm overwhelmed. I have no idea what I'm doing. I was working part-time at like Finish Line or something. I had a job and had full credits, so I made like an excuse that I was doing too much. And my buddy sits me down and he's like, dude, he was the president of the fraternity at the time. And I was like, and he said to me, what's going on, man? And I told him all the stuff, and he's like, let me just tell you, like, basically said, I believe in you and we need you in this fraternity. And like,
damn,
dude, tell me that that's not powerful when you're sitting there just doubting yourself and you have nobody to like reach out and be like, hey man, like we believe in you, like no matter what. It's like the family will always do that, but like the person who you meet that's in the fraternity who's just like, hey man, I just sort of met you, but like I know you've got this. And I'm like, dang, he believes in me? That's pretty cool.
It kind of becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he obviously knows something about me. This is our assumption in our brain, right? Is he obviously knows something about me that I don't know about myself? What is that?
Yeah.
And then essentially you live up to whatever that is.
Yeah, dude. And until that point, we're just living with all of the experiences and thoughts that we've created in our head for whatever reason that we have. And it's like, if your paradigm is set on fear and doubt and insecurity and not being good enough, which are all things that I've dealt with massively, by the way. I think many people deal with, I like that. I don't know. I like to think many people, how should I phrase this? I don't like to think that. I know people are dealing with fear. I know people are dealing with these insecurities. And it's like, just know you're not alone. Fear has held me back from thinking I'm good enough to do things. And it's like, there's a great podcast out there. It's called Suck at Something. I think it was on like Aubrey Marcus's show a while back. It's like, you're gonna be bad before you do something like a bunch of times before you get the reps in. Like, how was your first podcast episode?
Terrible. I cringe when I listen to it.
Dude, I'm creating daily YouTube videos right now. You're one of the only people who watches them. Like, and I don't even know how to make a thumbnail. I don't know how to put a thumbnail on my YouTube video, bro. I'm not kidding, but
we need to talk after the show.
Yeah. So we could. Good thing I shared it with you.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
But like, dude, I committed to just doing it daily now because I'm like, whatever, dude. This is as bad as I'm ever gonna be at it. I'm just gonna get better from here. So it's like, if you're letting fear hold you back on something that you know you want to do and that could help you grow and accelerate toward the life of your dreams, think about how wild that is, that you're letting it hold you back.
Dude, it's, have you read The Dip by Seth Godin?
Dude, I just ordered it.
Oh, you did?
Crazy enough, I think it just arrived, yeah.
I didn't realize you're such a big Seth Godin fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll give you this short story because it's exactly what you're talking about right now. Is as the title describes, the dip essentially is like there's a spike in the beginning when you're excited about whatever the endeavor is. Like let's say it's a YouTube channel or a business or a relationship or a workout plan, whatever it is. There's a spike in the beginning, and then there's a really long dip afterwards where you suck at it.
Yeah.
Dating, working out, networking, business, name your thing is like, and I often call it the valley of suck.
Yep.
And everyone goes through it.
Yep.
And the only way through it is through it.
Yep.
But I think the important part is the awareness around the fact of that's coming and it's going to happen and that's okay. But it's like, don't use that as an excuse to quit, because you know what happens after the dip. Like you said, what comes up must go down. It's vice versa as well. What goes down must come up. Is that after the dip, what happens? It goes up. Like you get better at whatever the thing it is, whether it's dating or health or business, etc.
Yeah, you start to gain confidence.
Right.
Competence. Competence. Yeah. I mean, you start to literally get better at it. Right. And through the feedback of getting better at it, you're like, oh, like I think I want to do this more now. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? It's like when you first go to the gym and try to put up, whatever you put up on the bar that you can do, like the most you can do. You're flimsy. You don't know how you're going to get that thing up. But it's like, dude, after going for 5 or 10 years or whatever it is, like you're probably going to be quite a bit better at pushing that bar off your chest.
Yeah, man. Exactly to your point too about the podcasting thing, I still reflect on that. It's so funny because even when I first started the show, people are always asking me like, how do I do my first 5 episodes or my first 10 episodes? And they're asking me about equipment and software and intros and music. And my advice every time is like, do whatever gets you to hit record. Because like you're just going to suck for a long time. It's exactly what you're doing. Why I texted you the other day about your YouTube videos is like, it's literally just the act of putting in the reps where you need to get out that suck phase, regardless of like, has it a thumbnail? Does it have an intro? Is the quality of the video very good? Who cares?
Yeah.
At this point, it's like you're just learning the craft and trying to get consistent with sticking to it for long enough to actually start getting better at it.
100%. And I think it teaches you to like make a promise to yourself and keep that promise. Like if you say you're going to do something, keep doing it, even if it's hard. Right? Like, dude, the other night I was like exhausted and didn't want to make a YouTube video and like didn't know what I would talk about. And I was just like, you know what? As long as I take one step forward and turn that record button on and start talking, maybe I do that a few times because I need to get rolling or I need to outline it a little bit, but I will get started and I will share something that's valuable and I will create something. And it's like, dude, it was 8:30 p.m. and I'm like, I could easily go to like start thinking about winding down and going to bed. That is the easy thing. Mm-hmm. It's like we talked about simple versus easy recently. It's like, do you want your life to be like easy? Like, do you want your life to be just like a bunch of things that you find to be like wake up out of bed and just mosey around and do the next thing that like, have no intention set to your day? Or do you want it to be like simple? Like you have structure, you have discipline, you know where you're going, you have time blocks, you go to the gym when you say you're going to go to the gym, you record that video when you say you're going to record that video. If I show up to do a podcast with you, I bring my A game, right? It's like, these are some promises that we start to like make to ourselves and then keep and then get better at.
Yep. And side note on that, are you on a challenge right now? Like, are you trying to consistently post for so many days in a row? Or are you just trying to get in the habit of doing it daily?
Just getting in the habit of doing it daily. Yeah. Nobody's like challenging me to do this. I'm actually challenging myself to just like to do it, to start like, cause I wanted to like, almost like Kobe Bryant, like view my game film. Like if I can like spot things that I'm doing and start to see like, maybe I could do this better. And then I can ask other people too, like, what do you think? And like, where would you like spice this up? Like Bates was giving me some good feedback about my YouTube videos. And he's like, dude, first of all, he was awesome. Cause he's like, you got a storytelling ability and like, dude, this is great. And it's exciting. And so then he said like, man, it'd be really cool if you could like, I see other people like dropping in these little blurbs, like in like to keep people like engaged and like, doing little transitions and like fun stuff to make the video pop a little bit more. And so I was starting to think about that. I would have never thought about that if I didn't post a few videos.
Right, because every video that you post, I mean, Mr. Beast talks about this. He's like the #1 YouTuber on all of YouTube if you don't know who he is. But basically it's like every video, just try to get 1% better. And then you compound that over a long enough time. But that's true for everything, right? Is like whether that's a client that you're working with or an exercise that you're doing, is that we think too big so often.
Yep.
As opposed to just like, what's one little tiny tweak that I can do? Maybe it's something as basic as like, I have better lighting this time, or I say this word a bit differently, or I have like one quick pan out or pan in. I've realized this lately, like with a lot of the content that I'm creating from a social media standpoint, is I've noticed from like when I scroll all the way back to my older ones and look at the ones now, it's like, it's bananas, dude.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Yeah. That growth is crazy, right?
But yeah, man. So, okay, something I really want to tap into with you is, what was the first job out of Kent University then? Yeah,
so I got this job in Richfield, Ohio. Richfield, I believe it was called. Yeah. And it was about 30 minutes south of Cleveland at Charles Schwab. And my buddy had referred me to get the job, and I was like excited. It was my first, real world job, right? And I don't know, I was making like 40 grand a year or something, and it was like just out of school. I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna have some income. I'm not gonna like be a bum. This is great. So it was an inbound call center, dude. Like I was taking about 50 calls a day, mostly from people who wanted to cash out their 401ks. Trying to teach them like savings fundamentals and why it might be a good idea maybe not to cash out their 401k and like, think about it. And dude, they had like just been terminated from their job most of the time when they were calling in. So and it'd be like random stuff. Like I'd help people with like, I don't know, password resets. Like it just seems so like meaningless to me. I was just sitting there and I was like, what am I doing? A password reset? You can't just like put forgot password. I'm actually taking my time to do this. So yeah, I was working in an inbound call center. Yeah.
Sounds riveting. Yeah. When did the initial idea birth of LionFit happen then? Yeah.
Well, I did LionFit as a college writing project first.
Oh.
It was completely wrong. How I like the teacher was like, that totally wasn't the like how we wanted you to like build this writing project. And I don't know, it's what got me to tick. And at the same time, I was like taking this 1 credit entrepreneurial course that I had found. And this guy would just bring in, he was part of the X Prize Foundation. If anybody's ever heard of the X Prize Foundation, I don't know if you've heard of the X Prize Foundation.
Diamandis?
Yeah, I think that's Peter Diamandis is one of the guys.
That's how you say it. Peter Diamandis. Yeah.
So this guy like had something to do with the X Prize Foundation, which I realized this guy was like pretty like awesome coming to Kent State and do this 1 credit course. And he would bring in entrepreneurs once.
Peter?
No, not Peter. It was a totally different guy.
But got it. I was like, what?
It was just a professor who would come in and he was just doing this for probably just to like give back and help students.
Got it. Because if anyone doesn't know Peter, that guy is brilliant beyond brilliance.
Oh yeah, dude. He's written the books like Abundance, right? And he has all kinds like the future is faster than you think. And,
totally. That guy is honestly brilliant. I mean, most people probably actually never heard of him, but he's up there with like Elon, man.
Yeah.
With, like genius status.
Like future and like futuristic type thinking and like how we're going to prepare for all that stuff. Yeah, he's a big deal. Yeah. So yeah, anyways, this guy had come and ended up being one of my favorite courses. He would bring like a lot of these people who formerly graduated from Kent State but started their own companies, and he'd have them come and talk about their business. Like I remember a guy who was with Steel Clothing, it was called at the time, and he'd started his own fitness clothing business, and I was like, oh dude, this is sweet. And I was like starting to like dream again. I was like, in my head I was doing this college writing project for LionFit and starting to come up with like, industry and competitive analysis. What would it take to like, start, like if I wanted to do a gym, how would that look? What would the costs be? Like the writing project actually included a lot of it was like a business plan basically. So I was thinking about how I could actually, and what would LionFit look like and what do I want it to be? And started pulling logos and doing different stuff. But it was, so at the same time was learning about entrepreneurship through this random course that I took, dude. I don't even know why I took it, but it looked fun. So
an entrepreneurship course, or what was the course specifically?
It literally was this guy would he'd bring in one person each, like one night a week, and you would just come in. I don't even know, the follow-up might have been to like, it was so funny. It was like, probably just tell me something like you learned about this and write a 1-pager on it or something. But it was,
How has the vision changed from when you first thought about LionFit to what it looks like now?
Well, it started as something that I wanted to do, and I got into bodybuilding when I was like getting out of college because I needed something to like keep me excited. I was working in the call center and started getting into bodybuilding.com. Was following like Steve Cook, Craig Capurso, some like big names in the space, and I'd see like, I'd learning about macros and just eating a bunch of it's
stacks and stacks of supplements.
Stacks on stacks, 1.2 grams per pound of body weight protein.
Dude.
Yeah, dude.
The amount of supplements I was taking at one point was bananas.
Yeah, bro.
I think the only thing
you ever take a Mascator, dude, back in the day?
No, I couldn't get on that train. I would do everything else except for that. Every sort of protein, creatine, post-workout sugar, dextrose, like you name your thing. I don't do anything now. But
yeah. They sold a lot of that stuff.
Oh my gosh, they crushed. I don't know if they still are, but they did really well for a while.
Yeah. That was a pretty big thing. So yeah, I got into bodybuilding and just like got pretty shredded and never like competed or anything like that. But I just kind of like had in my heart, I had this idea of LionFit. I'd be at work and I would be like, like just feeling like I wanted to do it. I started watching actually Christian Guzman. I started watching a bunch of his videos, his vlogs about when he was creating Alpha Elite. and, you know, just like loved what he was doing. And I'm like, man, he's got this clothing line. It's like super cool. And he's building this gym in Houston, and he was doing all these amazing things. And he's literally like, he's my age. Like I'm 30. I think he's 30 as well. So at the time he was 23, just like completely sending it. And I'm like, man, and I just go home and be like, oh, dude, he's just taking a huge risk. And I was like, in my head, my paradigm was go make a paycheck. Don't go broke.
Okay, so that's the birth of it, was like seeing other people that were building essentially these online fitness brands, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
That was the birth of LionFit.
Yeah.
How do you see it now then? How's it changed?
So as I was saying before, it's kind of like it started with like me and like personal goals. Dude, I want to share this quote that Stephon Diggs put up one time. He's a receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And he said, better figure out who you are before the world gets its hands on you. So when I was 23, bro, if I would have started sharing stuff with the world, I would have been obsessed with what do other people think of me. Now I'm like, how can I help other people like to realize more of their true potential and like come along on the journey? So it's been an evolution in me, like shifting from like here to like here to understand, like, I want to know about like, dude, I want to know your story. I want to know your path. I want to know some of the things you struggle with. Chances are we could probably connect on a lot of those things, and maybe we could build some community behind this and catch steam together. Like, you don't have to go at this alone. Dude, let's go rip a kettlebell workout in the park and like get each other better and go do cold tubs and have fun. Like, we don't have to go at this alone. And I learned that, like, dude, other people are fascinating. And so just it became a lot less of like an egotistical thing, and it became more of like an impact thing.
So you've taken the me or the I out of it essentially and looked at it more of how can I support somebody else? How can I build a community? How can it be about serving others versus just like building a brand or a business around myself?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do my best to look at it that way, right? Because it's like I know that there are so many people out there that, dude, they're so close to achieving a specific goal in their life, and they just need to turn a little bit in a different direction and start going that way. And if we can help those people just a little bit to start, you know, taking those positive steps, that's a big win.
Dude, your branding is so on point. It's unbelievable, though. I know we've talked about this in depth a number of times, so we don't have to get too deep into it, but like how much intention you've put behind the font and all the points off of the lion head and just like even the meaning behind each piece of it. It's crazy how much depth is actually into this, which says a lot about how long you've been thinking about this, obviously.
Yeah, I used to sit when I was going back to, you know, and actually after school I had gone and moved back into my dad's house in Ohio when I was commuting to Charles Schwab. So I was like, I would go and actually put on, I would take out note cards at night. I was 23 years old, and I would take out these note cards and I would just draw these like lions and like start to, they looked all, I should show you some pictures, bro. They looked hilarious. Like, it was just, I was drawing these like rigid lines, and like I was just trying to figure out ways to like put together what looked like a lion, and I knew LionFit was something that I wanted to do. I must have done hundreds of note cards of drawings though, and just I would go home and that's all I could think about. All I could think about was like doing that. And so eventually, my brother is an architect, and he works on graphic design. He actually now helps people with logo. Like, it's some work he does on the side. And I think we like got into that through, I came to him and I was like, yo, Bert, like, I need some help to create this logo and bring it to life, which is a fun story.
Yeah. I mean, you can share it by all means.
Yeah. So I brought it at one point, and when I was, you know, coming back home, we always meet up at our house in Bemis Point, New York. It's like where we come back and the siblings come and get together, and it's fun. And it's my mom's house, and we just love it. So I sat at the kitchen table, and I started working on it with him, and we get a bunch of stuff, and we put like a real lion behind it and start to like outline and like pull, like, you know, some like start to pull these lines in, and like, because I wanted it to look like, you know, that have this cool graphic to it, like a graphic lion, not like a true like lion on it. So I was like, I just wanted it to be a graphic. I wanted it to be fun and sharp and determined and focused and all these things, and I just gave him the vision. We started working on it. We pulled it away, and it was like, it didn't even look like it had a nose at one point. Like, it just looked goofy. It was funny. And he's like, and then I started explaining, man, I want it to look like there's like peaks to a mountain, like how that curve up and come up here on top of it. And it was abstract, and it was different, and all these things. And he's like, my brother's always just listened to me, and he's like, okay, I think I get it. And so he's like, dude, and he knows I just love, like, if I'm getting too cooped up, he's like, dude, you should just go to the gym and I'm going to work on this for like an hour. And when you come back, I think I know what you want. And so I go to the gym and I'm just like, whatever. I just get my workout in and I'm like, getting some steam off. And then I come back and dude, he had put this together, this logo right here that you see. And I was like, that's the one.
Does your brother get commission on this for how many of these you sell?
Dude, he definitely should.
There should be like a royalty for this.
100%, dude. Yeah. I mean, eventually I'd love it if he could be like a part of the business, dude. I mean, he is so sharp, man. And he's just, Bert understands like me and like how I work creatively so much better than like anybody else could ever like understand.
Yeah.
So it would just be amazing if we could continue to do work together. So yeah.
So for anybody that doesn't know what LionFit is, can you give them essentially like what is it that you do and how do you serve people?
Yeah, man. So LionFit is it's a personal growth company. Like it focuses on helping people to realize a little bit more of their full potential, right? It's like I always say, it's about the journey, not the destination. And I'm working on this tagline, the journey starts with you, right? So primary emphasis right now is inside of, I do nutrition coaching, 1-to-1. I just started doing 1-to-1 nutrition coaching, health and fitness insights, and just helping people like bring awareness to, the difference between health and fitness. We talk about that a lot. But yeah, man, it all came up on the roots of personal growth and getting into, a bunch of books. And that was, I'm sure we'll get to that part of the story where it's back to like Schwab and what happened after I worked there, but
yeah, we can jump to it right now.
Do you want to jump to it? Okay, cool. So I had essentially been at that job for 11 months. Keeping the job was contingent on me passing the Series 7 and 66 financial licensing exams. Series 7, so you had 3 chances at each. Series 7, failed twice, and I passed the 3rd time. My manager's like, yes, let's go. And he was hyped up. Tyler Deck, shout out if you're going to listen to this podcast. So he's awesome. He's still a great friend of mine. And so I kept the job, and then I had to take my Series 66, which is more like law-based, some of it's financial concepts. Take it twice, fail it, and Tyler's like, dude, you're going to pass the 3rd time. Because it's like, I passed the first one pretty well the 3rd time I did it. I'm in the Prometric Center, and I press submit, and it comes back, ... Failed.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I was like, boom, like life kind of shattered for a second because it's like my job is contingent on this, so I guess I don't have a job anymore.
Damn.
So
then what?
I called Tyler, and I was like, bro, and he's like, give me the good news, man. And I was like, I failed the test. And he's like, no, and I was like, yeah, dude, I failed the test. And he's like, all right. And he like walked me through, like, he's like, do you like choose to quit? And it's like, I guess that looks better on a resume. So he was just helping me out. But like, yeah, I mean, I had to move on, and I was broken. I mean, I drove around and broke down in tears. Again, coming back to like, I didn't know what my direction was. Like, where am I supposed to go from here? Do I go like, and then you just look at your history. It's like, do I go back and work that same, like I had been a server at this restaurant back home for a few summers. And I was like, do I just hit them up and like start serving at the restaurant back in town? I don't really know what I want. But I need to make money. And I just like, I ended up actually driving over to Barnes & Noble. And I was like, all right. Like, it was the first time where I think I just took real ownership of my life. And I was like, this isn't about like calling somebody, or this isn't about looking for excuses. This isn't about like, like poor me or being the victim. This is about taking ownership. And so I ended up going to Barnes & Noble, and I picked up 3 books. I picked up Tools of Titans, The Obstacle is the Way, and I picked up Leadership 101 by John Maxwell. I read The Obstacle is the Way in one day. I read Tools of Titans in pretty close to what was about a day. I just devoured it. And that's about a 500 to 550 page book. And I was just like, I'm not going to let anything stop me from like figuring out who I am and what I want.
Pain is a powerful motivator, man. It reminds me of when I got divorced. So when she initially initiated and asked for a divorce, very quickly after that, obviously I was in severe distress, a lot of emotional pain. And exactly to your story, I was ravenous about every book, every coach, every blog related to dating and relationships and marriage and basically just trying to understand essentially what happened or trying to learn about how to make this better or how to remedy it or how to learn for the next time. Like exactly to your point, dude, I was ravenous. Like if anybody wants to talk to me about relationships or marriage or dating books, I've read like almost all of them from that experience. So
yeah. And
I totally get it.
And what did you learn from doing that? Like did you find any insights about yourself, or did you find you needed to go a different direction ultimately from the books?
Yeah, if I had to wrap it up into a really concise statement, really what I learned from it was that on every topic across the realm, from a table to relationships to a specific business to a telephone to anything, is that there's so much more to know about it than what meets the eye. Everything has the depth to it that is so much deeper than most people realize. And so like that was just another one of those things where I was like, yeah, dating, it's simple. Like you just get together and you take care of each other and you go on dates. And no, there is so much to be learned. And like it opened the door of like, that's why whenever I was telling my girlfriend this the other day, she's like keeps asking me about like wanting to play pickleball and whatever, which is fine, whatever. But I recognize now that if I'm going to play pickleball, I know my nature. I want to get good at it. But to get good at it, there's a depth of understanding and knowledge that you just don't realize.
Yep.
And that's totally my personality type. And don't get me wrong, it's fine to go and play and like if you want to go play some spike ball, whatever, that's cool. But if you want to get good at something like a dating or like finding a new job or whatever it is like there's a depth of knowledge that you just don't even realize is there.
Yeah, massive rabbit holes, dude.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And I realized that too with like going into the personal growth books. I was like, you know, you can, and I probably read about in that time, 3 to 4 months where I was out of a job, I probably read almost 20 personal growth books in that span of time. So it was like over one a week. And I was just diving in. And eventually I was like, when you don't have much money in your bank account, I mean, you got to go get another job. So that was eventually what I had to do. But I learned a lot about myself inside of like reflecting and then just diving into deeper resources for sure.
Something I want to kind of jump to with you, if you're cool with it, is you eventually got yourself into a sales job, right?
Yes. Yep. So that's actually exactly what happened. I hit up the only way I've ever actually gotten jobs is through connections. So I just started hitting up people I knew rather than going on like monster.com and like going on like, I don't know, job sites and trying to figure it out. I was like, no, I'm going to tap into my resources and pool of connections and start hitting up people who are doing similar things. Good buddy of mine, Alex Eimiller, I knew he was we had talked before. He was doing something similar just in the financial world. And he had asked me what I was doing. And I was like, all right, I'll hit him up. Maybe there will be a potential opportunity. He had gone to Arizona State. So he was living in Arizona. And the company that I ended up going to it's called Asset Mark. And they have offices in Phoenix. And they have offices in Chicago amongst their home offices in like Northern California. But he's like, I think there's sales jobs actually opening up in Chicago. And I was like, perfect, dude. I always wanted to move to like New York or Chicago. So I was like, amazing. Like, dude, if I can get there, like, that's awesome. And so I ended up taking the interview. It was only like 2 interviews and then ended up moving out to Chicago shortly thereafter. I was about 24 at the time. January of 2018 was when this was. So that's when I officially started getting into sales, yeah.
So you've been doing it for the last 6 years? Is that accurate?
Going on 6 years, yeah. And I just quit my job last week.
Woo!
Officially, yeah.
So question on that. In the 6 years of sales, what's maybe the best piece of advice you could give to somebody?
It's a lot of the same thing that I realized with LionFit, right? Like, it's not about you. It's about the other person. It's about their pain. It's about what they're experiencing. It's about what they are unable to see or achieve without your guidance. It's not about you making money. It's not about you having the best sales results relative to your peers. It's not about any of that. It's not about you getting President's Club, which is so funny because they like sell you all these things as like, oh, like what's up with your numbers? And I'm like, well, what's up with the person's problem? Like, I gotta be in tune with that before I can like help you get better numbers.
I love that so much. It's unbelievable.
Like, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Why are we so focused on like how many calls did you make? And
because it's easy to measure.
Yeah, but like emotions aren't.
Right.
And like people's deep pain that they're going through
Exactly.
is not easy to measure.
Exactly.
But it's meaningful. Like, what are we doing?
So if I was to wrap it up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like care about the person you're talking to, essentially.
Yeah, care about the person you're talking to for sure. You have to care. Or else you're just faking it and they can tell. And they can tell. And if they can't tell, you're not going to get very far doing it that way.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to call you on your BS, or you'll realize it. You'll realize that you're just not aligned. Like there's no alignment with what you're like the person you're saying you are, but the person you're actually being.
That's why the belief behind the product and service, I think, is so important. And I saw for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but towards the end of your tenure, I guess you could say, with your company, you clearly weren't super bought into where they were going or the company or the belief behind it, which obviously showed up, I'm sure, in sales results as well. Is because like if you don't at the very get-go actually care about or believe in the thing that you're trying to sell, people are going to sense that.
Yeah, I definitely felt a cultural shift. Love all the connections I made there, and you know, and I learned a lot. I mean, there was a lot that I learned through the experience. But yeah, ultimately, man, it didn't align, and I had lost like all passion for it, dude. I mean, I was waking up and it was hard to get up and do it.
What was the moment like when you quit?
I cried. I mean, you guys saw me the night before. I don't know if you were there at that exact moment when I was talking with Bates, and then I was like talking with Ross, but Bates was really like hitting me with some powerful questions. And like,
This was the dinner we were at?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
This was last week.
Yeah.
And I openly just like broke down in front of those guys. I was crying. I mean, I was a mess. I was like, guys, I didn't even really know what to say. I was like, I hope like you're cool with like me like opening up to you guys like this. And they just embraced me, bro.
Yeah.
It was so powerful to have just a couple of men that I trust there that were embracing a few, right? And just there, you guys just all like embraced me. And I was like, something in that moment just told me, you won't fail. Like you could, something could happen, or maybe the money or whatever it is, but it's like, you got this.
Well, yeah, man, I say this a lot on this show, is we so often need other people to believe in us before we believe in ourselves. And yeah, I mean, we all believe in you. So for us to look at you, it's like, we don't worry. But then obviously wrapped in your own subconscious and mind is like doubt, fear, worry, anxiety. Like, but from us looking at you, we're like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, we know you have this. But it's interesting because we still need that, though. We need to lean on someone else's belief before we can adopt it for ourselves.
Yeah. Which is why it's so important to have people around you who care about you and believe in you, and that you're getting inside of communities where there's like-minded people. And, we've all heard about that. Many of us have heard about the top 5, right? You are the result of the top 5 people you spend the most time with. For sure. You're also just a result of the people that you see on a regular basis, right? Like if you're getting around crowds that are not doing stuff that like aligns with your goals, dreams, and aspirations, then you're just going to keep seeing that, and you're going to think that, oh, that's the wave. Like the power of proximity is huge though, dude. If you're around people who are doing stuff that aligns with those things, you're going to start seeing it, and you're going to realize that those things are possible. And it's like, oh, this is what's happening. And you start to get like more juiced up about it, because you're like, oh, I was looking at it completely wrong before. So,
and all of this leads us to today, where you are creating content on YouTube, you're doing nutritional coaching, you're pumping out some sick swag that you're rocking right now and brought to this interview as well, which I'm going to start wearing. I should have just wore it for this interview is what I should have done, but
you're good, bro.
And so anything else that we missed that we wanted to cover in regards to LionFit, what you're doing or where you're going next?
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, I just think we all experience things deep down that can hold us back. I'm launching the website soon, and if anybody wants to go check it out, there's a blog in there, and I've actually written quite a few blogs and gotten it like revved up. Just need to update the store. It should be live by this weekend. But like So I don't even have to plug it yet, but
Plug it, bro.
all right. So belionfit.com. And there's a blog called,
And go spam that site. Check it out. We'll put it in the show notes. Okay, keep going.
there's one blog called What's Holding You Back. There's another called Making the Jump. There's a few in there that just like, I mean, I wrote them from literally like my bedroom at time. Like this was recently when I went back home to Bemis Point, New York. And I was sitting there like, I don't want to be doing what I'm doing with my career right now. And couldn't even like sleep. And I'd wake up at like 1 a.m. and I'd write those blogs. Like, we all have things that are part of our paradigm that are potentially holding us back from living our truth and from being our authentic self, which, by the way, is the person that everybody would love to see show up. Like, people want to know you. They want to know your true gifts. They want you to be the light. Like Matthew 5:14 says that. My mom got me a table weight that says Matthew 5:14, be the light. Like, you're not going to help people by sitting at home and waiting for the right perfect time to show up and serve. You know Dale Carnegie, right?
Definitely.
He has a quote that says, inaction breeds doubt and fear.
Definitely.
Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer a fear, don't sit at home and think about it. Go out and get busy.
I think that paperweight, is that on your desk at your place?
Yeah.
I very distinctly remember that when you were housing me when I was home free for a few days. Notice I said home free, not homeless. But I do remember that
Yes,
actually sitting there.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Especially to that point about taking action is like, that's why I created those stickers that you have on your laptop about less thinking, more doing. Is you're exactly right, man. Is like, so rarely can we think our way through problems or doubts or fears. You just start acting towards them, and then eventually the fear goes away.
Yeah, 100%. It's positive action forward, right? Like, positive thinking will only get you so far. Positive action is where like things really start to happen. And so, yeah.
I have a rapid fire question round for you. You ready?
Cool. Let's rock.
First things that come to mind. What's your best business advice?
Go for it.
It's fitting for you. What's your best marketing advice?
Help people.
Favorite part about entrepreneurship as a new entrepreneur? Congrats, by the way. What's your favorite part?
Thanks, buddy. My favorite part about entrepreneurship is just doing what I have always dreamed about. It's amazing to wake up every day and just know that this has always been on my heart and just going for it, man. It's been super cool.
Yeah, because it's been what? How long has that been? 6 years? 7?
Dude, my mom literally wrote it's in my Bible, dude. It says on August 11th, 2013. And it's August is like an amazing month.
So it's been 10 years.
10 years, yeah. Proverbs 30:30, which says the lion, the strongest beast in the kingdom, backs down before no one. Yeah.
That's a quote for the show notes. When are you the most productive?
Between like 5 and 7 a.m., dude.
Early bird.
Yep.
Who is your inspiration?
My mom.
I figured you were going to say that. Tell me one secret or something most people don't know about you.
Dude, I cry about a lot of stuff. Like, I'm an emotional person, and I feel really deeply. And I, even more now, I empathize with people like as like individuals, but also as a collective. Like, I feel when people are experiencing pain, and I feel when like the world is going through it. And so I try to just pray and help people best I can.
Probably explains why you're good at sales. I think it was Gary Vee that said your most empathetic salespeople are often your best salespeople because they actually care about the person they're talking to.
Yeah.
Which I would definitely put you into that camp.
Thanks, buddy. It's also cool to cry.
Yeah.
Like, I want to say, like people, like don't hold back, let it flow. You might actually feel quite a bit better.
And if you look at my man here, you're going to be like, wow, he's like buff and strong, but he's got a gentle side to him as well. What would you change about yourself?
Not one thing, dude. God made me exactly the way that God wanted to make me.
Great answer. What's your favorite app or resource you're using right now?
My favorite app or resource that I'm using right now? My calendar, dude. Finally, just like using my calendar and grabbing a hold of it and sticking with what I say I'm going to do.
Time blocking.
Yep.
When were you the happiest?
Dude, definitely. I mean, when I was a kid, I was just, again, I was always smiling, right? Like that was, for me, that was when I had space to be the dreamer. That was when I didn't have what I considered to be like the responsibility or thought of what society like thinks I should be doing, or what I thought society had me believing. And so, yeah, man, I think freedom is like, that sense of freedom is when I'm happy and I can just be authentically who I am.
Love that. What's your favorite part about Austin and you can't say the people?
All the resources and like events and community built around entrepreneurship. Like, dude, this town is just like a place where ideas come to life. It's so much fun. And if you have an idea, especially if you're living in Austin, if you have an idea, number one, I'm really big on go for it right now, obviously. But like living in Austin, dude, you have so many resources here. It's so cool and it's been so fun. And yeah, man, the journey's just getting started. Like, so I'm super pumped.
There's literally a community for freaking everything here.
Yes.
If you're into basket weaving or, I don't know, name your thing. I swear to God, there's a community for it here.
Yes, yes.
I have one last question. Before I ask that question, though, I want to acknowledge you, man, for so many reasons. For number one, and most importantly, empathy. You are a very kind, genuine person, and even to the point where I was talking briefly earlier about housing me when I had nowhere to stay, which you were so generous and gracious about it, and you'd make me coffee and food and leave things out for me. And so, like, really honestly appreciate that. For joining us on our guys trip and being an incredible piece to this 8-man guild that we put together in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota. For chasing your dreams and your passions and finally letting go of the previous version of yourself so that you can come into a new version of yourself, and for showing up here today. Appreciate it, man.
Dude, that's awesome. Thank you for that. I really appreciate you. And I want to acknowledge you as well, man, for just, again, being like the most patient, curious person ever. I mean, if y'all don't know Corey, and you see Corey, you meet Corey and have the pleasure to like do that, dude, you are present, bro. You are tapped in and you're here for it. Like, I can feel it being here with you, which is why I was like, dude, coming on the podcast with you, there was no like real super nerves about it. Whereas I'd be nervous about a lot of stuff right before doing it, but I'm like, it's Corey. Like, I love Corey, and every time we have a conversation, dude, it's so awesome. I learned so much. I'm like, man, the world needs more Corey Hibben, bro. And like, just like, so keep showing up. And as my grandma, who passed away in June, said to me, and I want to carry this on, and it's very special. I want you to know, she said, don't let anyone steal that beautiful energy of yours.
It's deep, man.
Like, don't, bro. Like, because you have something special and unique, and the world needs more of it, man. Like, the world really needs more of it. So, yeah, when I hit you up the other day on Instagram, and I shared, or it was a text that you shared on Instagram about working up the courage to go live the life of my dreams, bro, I meant every single word. And I am grateful for you. I'm so grateful for you. So I will keep telling you it. I'm telling you, bro.
It's acknowledged, man. I appreciate that, honestly. Like, and that's one of the things that keeps me going in so many ways, from this show to the content and everything, is like messages like that, man. Like, there's no better feeling. There's no amount of money that could be better than messages like that. So
power of the tongue, bro. Like, we all have the ability to, like, the words that we say are very powerful.
Totally.
Just appreciate your intention.
I have one last question. Before I ask the question, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
Instagram is C_Meekins, my last name, Meekins. YouTube is Connor Meekins. A website I plugged earlier is LionFit.com. And those are probably the best areas to find me right now.
Cool. Put them in the show notes. So you're probably the perfect person to ask this question. And so at the end of every episode, I ask, really, what's your best piece of advice for somebody starting at ground zero? And you're not entirely starting at ground zero, but you're definitely in earlier stages of your entrepreneurship journey and business. And so if you were talking to yourself or somebody else in that circumstance, and they were just confused, they weren't sure what to do, they weren't sure what steps to take, what's maybe the best piece of advice you could give to them?
Well, number one, study yourself and learn a little bit about who you are. Like, you got to want to go deep and not fear that place. Like, you have so many gifts and so much potential that's just deep down inside you that's just waiting to be expressed and opened up and shared with the world. So share your gifts, suspend disbelief. Like, you have to, like, for a second be like, what if I couldn't fail? What would be possible? If I just knew that, like, whatever I did, money, like, it was all going to be there, all the resources were, like, they were available, what would I be doing with my life? And get emotionally, like, tapped into that, right? So it's like things happen intellectually, then they happen emotionally, and then they happen physically. So if you can get tapped in enough to that, like, emotional side, dude, you're going to, like, manifest it physically ultimately. You're going to show up and do it. So learn about yourself and ultimately show up because other people need you.
Great advice. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for being on the show.
Dude, you're the man. Appreciate you, bro. Love you.
Love you. Hey friend, thanks for listening to the show, and if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.